Joe Burrow threw for 5 touchdowns, and Derrick Henry scores another 2 touchdowns in Week 9. We react to the best, worst, and most surprising fantasy performance of the week on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy leagues. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. And when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about fantasy, NFL, and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can enjoy the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're almost all the way through Week 9. We have one more game tonight, the Chiefs versus the Buccaneers. A lot of exciting performances, a lot of bad performances, especially from the wide receiver position. It just wasn't happening for them this week. It was a lot of great running backs, some good tight ends. And then there were some surprising performances as well that maybe you can grab them off waivers or, maybe you can finally start trusting them in your starting lineup. So let's start with the best performances of the week. Got to go with the Bengals offense, right? Joe Burrow throws 5 touchdowns. Chase Brown has the backfield to himself and gets 157 total yards and a touchdown. And then our boy Mike Gesicki goes off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wasn't the biggest day for Jamar Chase, but man, Joe Burrow was cooking against the Raiders.
Yeah, the Raiders have a lot of issues. They had to go to Desmond Ridder at quarterback. They fired their offensive coordinator, their offensive line coach, their quarterbacks coach. These are all in their first year, by the way. So they're already disappointed. They couldn't last the season. So they're a disaster. And defensively, Max Crosby was getting frustrated because the Bengals were doing whatever they wanted. Interesting, Jamar Chase kind of was the focal point of the secondary. And what did Joe Burrow do? Just throw to the tight ends. He threw all over the field. Andre Asavas got involved again. Jermaine Burton would have been involved, but he pouted before the game the day before. So he was spreading the ball around. He's locked in. I don't know how this team cannot make the playoffs now. They're only one game out of the spot at 4-5. Joe Burrow's playing at such a high level right now, reading the entire field, making a lot of plays. It was disappointing for Jamar Chase, but we did. If you listen to Friday's show, that was the good part of Friday's show. I'll just throw it out there. Chase Brown and Mike Gesicki came through as our sleepers on the same team. So Raiders going forward, if you can get your running backs and tight ends in against the Raiders, do it every week. This team is just turning into a dumpster fire defensively. And the Bengals took full advantage. They needed this game badly. They had not won a game at home. So this is great momentum going into a potential high-scoring affair with the Ravens on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge game for them against the Ravens. Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdowns against the Ravens in Week 5 against the Ravens. No, that was at home. This would be on the road where their defense definitely played well against the Broncos, but that's Bo Nix, a rookie on the road. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game on Thursday. And the Ravens offense, the next best offense of the week. I mean, they were just unstoppable. Very wrong about Zay Flowers this week. He had no issues against this Broncos secondary that's been shutting down wide receivers. He had 127 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. Zay Flowers has just been that dude. Lamar Jackson, 3 passing touchdowns, another great fantasy performance. And Derrick Henry with another 2 touchdowns. He has 13 touchdowns through 9 games. He's on pace for 25 touchdowns on the season. I did predict that Derrick Henry would score 25 touchdowns prior to the season starting.
Yeah, that looks like it might hold up here. And he did score, by the way, his 100th career touchdown and his 101st. He got it right after. So good for anybody who has him. I mean, he's pretty much been the consistent guy there. If you drafted after the Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson tier that we thought was going to separate another guy in that tier that had a great play. He had that awesome play that Nick Sirianni called the best run that he's seen ever. 31 fantasy points here for Saquon Barkley. He could have had a bigger day. He lost that fumble there that really wasn't a fumble that got the Jaguars back in the game. But when you look at the Saquon, I mean, this offense is just humming right now. And without A.J. Brown, we'll see about his stats. We'll talk about it later. But it was a Devonta Smith, Saquon Barkley show. There's not a lot of people getting touches in this offense. So that's great to see. Saquon, again, he's going to have these big games. He's going to have the quiet games. But he's mostly locked in this Eagles offense.
Yeah, he's been so good. The fourth time this year, he scored at least 25 points and half PPR, tied for the most such games this year with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Baker Mayfield, who plays tonight. So I guess Baker could break that, which is just crazy. But yeah, Saquon has been just really solid. He has these huge games, and the games that weren't so great, it's still not killing you besides one game this year. So Saquon and Derrick Henry have been just easing picks in that second round this year. Devin Achane has been coming back with Tua. If Tua plays, Achane's amazing. 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, led the team with 8 receptions, puts up 58 receiving yards against the Bills. He gets the Rams next week. Like, he's just going to keep being a top 3-4 option as long as Tua is on the field.
Yeah, Raheem Mostert has been kind of settling for a kind of backup role if they need him in the red zone. But Achane was just great against the Bills, and you called it with the prize picks fix of the week, looking at Devon Achane to go over his receiving yards. Easily did that. He's being involved a lot more, much to the chagrin of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Managers here, Jalen Waddle actually did come through a little bit later in the game, but it was a grind to get Tyreek Hill to 80 yards, right? It was like so difficult. So I don't know what's happened with the Dolphins offense, but it seems to be all running and dink and dunk passing. I don't know, Tua, maybe his confidence is broken. Maybe Mike McDaniel's not as confident in him to get the ball downfield. Maybe their offensive line is breaking down and causing a lot of these checkdowns. But however you look at it, it's all about Devin Achane now is the centerpiece of the offense when it used to be Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I mean, Achane, he's just a special talent. He doesn't need too many touches to be great. And with his receiving work this year, he's just a really safe play as well. Yeah. Now, J.K. Dobbins and Chuba Hubbard, they haven't been the safest plays this year, but they've had a lot of good games. They both scored 2 touchdowns this week. Dobbins against the Browns, Hubbard against the Saints. I mean, the Saints defense, just pathetic. They did fire Dennis Allen this morning, so maybe their defense plays a little bit better. I don't know. They've just given up. Who loses to the Panthers? That's just embarrassing. But Hubbard, I'm not even so much worried about Jonathan Brooks coming back. It seems like he's never coming back. I guess he has a good chance to play week 10. You're still playing Hubbard, though, next week against the Giants. Great matchup. And then Dobbins, you're just going to have to deal with it right in your lineup. Like, he's touchdown or bust, but he's scoring a lot of touchdowns this year.
Yeah, and as Justin Herbert has gotten hotter the past 2 weeks, throwing the ball downfield, that's going to open up the running game a little bit more. So this Chargers team is really feeling it, and just good things are happening all around for Atlanta or for Los Angeles. I was going to get ahead that they're just ripping into some of these weaker teams, and they've done that all season long. I believe next up is the Saints for them. So they do have a bye week, I believe. So when you look at the Chargers, I mean, it is looking like spectacular here as we get into very good matchups. Basically, if they're playing a bad team, you can count on Justin Herbert. His numbers from the last 2 weeks against the Saints and this one, just almost identical, right? And J.K. Dobbins doing the same damage. So they're methodically going to do the same thing. Justin Herbert throws downfield. They're going to run a lot, and they're going to beat you in more games than not. So the Chargers, again, a very put-together team right now with Jim Harbaugh and really predictable, except maybe their wide receivers, right, Michelle? It's a little bit all over the field with Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer and Ladd McConkey, but there's just a lot more to look forward to in this Chargers offense all of a sudden.
There is, and they get the Titans next week. So like you said, bad team. You play J.K. Dobbins, you feel comfortable with that. They're going to run a bunch. Alvin Kamara, he's the only thing left in this Saints offense. Unfortunately, Chris Olave goes down with a concussion. It's his second of the year, and also like he's had a lot pile up on him since over the last 4 years. So I expect Olave to be out for a while. Kamara get 9 targets in this last game, gets 215 yards. He's everything for this offense. He's going to be a weekly top 5 play moving forward. But let's talk about Jaxson Smith-Njigba, because huge night for him. 7 receptions, 180 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, wide receiver 1 so far on the week. Unfortunately, there's a bye next week, and maybe they get back DK. But Do you think that either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett could get traded, which would then push JSN into a even better role moving forward? Now that they're on their bye week, now that they lost against the Rams and they're 4-4, 4-5.
Yeah, 4-5. So they're actually in last place in the NFC West right now. And updating a previous item on the Chargers, like it's hard to keep up with what bad team they're playing next. It seems like it lines up Saints, Browns, Titans. These 2-win teams are all kind of mashing up together for me at this point. So you look at the Seahawks at this stage. I mean, will they bench Geno Smith? I mean, that might come into some consideration. I don't see it necessarily happening, but they might think about it because the turnovers are rather costly. Do they want to evaluate now with Sam Howell? I mean, I wouldn't feel great if they want to do that because Geno Smith at least gets the ball deep, right? Sam Howell really struggled to get the ball deep last year, even though he has a good arm. So I want to see Geno in there. I do like how their chemistry warmed up, except for that one ball that was intercepted by the Rams that fell off JSN's hands. He could have had a bigger game. So I think the chemistry is there, the downfield passing. I don't know if this is going to cool off necessarily if DK Metcalf returns, right? But Tyler Lockett also scored a long touchdown this one. So I want Geno Smith to stay in there. Jackson's been Smith-Njigba showing his entire skill set, right? He was a first-round pick. He's a first-round pick drafted over several very good wide receivers for a reason. So he is a special talent. We saw that in full display. These Ohio State receivers, man, if you've got one of those in the NFL, you're looking good as an offense.
You really, really are. We're going to move into the most disappointing performances of the week. A lot of NFC North quarterbacks disappointing us this week, especially Jordan Love coming 0 touchdowns and interception against the Lions. We'll dig into that, what we're going to do with Jordan Love moving forward, and then also hit on the rest of the most disappointing players of the week right after we take a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up all the financial flavors and favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5 APY on invested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account that's uninvested cash and be rewarded again 3% on an IRA account with your retirement boost. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC.
This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. What's also super cool about Prize Picks is that they're the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks, your picks are still live. Vinnie and I will give you our 6 favorite Prize picks of the week on our Friday show, as we always do. But if you want to get signed up and start before then, all you have to do is download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. So both quarterbacks in this Lions-Packers game, it's not like they put up big numbers, right? But specifically Jordan Love, he very much disappoints in fantasy. We thought he could have a big week against this Lions secondary. 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He is now hasn't had a good fantasy day since week 6. He was banged up throughout this game, but didn't look pretty. They have a week 10 bye. What are you doing with Jordan Love moving forward?
Yeah, he was at least compiling, right? But I think those mistakes caught up to him, like just throwing the ball recklessly. And when guys weren't getting open, and the weather did play a factor
Yeah.
here, like it was a little bit sloppy there. The running games were more effective on both sides for a reason. Josh Jacobs was having a big game, but then they forgot about him, I guess. And he got stuffed at a key spot in the game. And really what the Packers need to do is figure out who their guys are, right? I think it's a little bit too scattershot sometimes. Like Romeo Dobbs, we got to get Christian Watson the ball, we got to find Dontavian Wicks, we got to find Tucker Kraft. Just throw to like 3 or 4 guys. Well, 3 guys, I would hope. They're already thrown to 5 guys at this point. So I don't know. Like, you don't need to force feed all these guys. I mean, your best 2 players are probably Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft. Get them the ball. Get him to throw some simple routes in the middle of the field. Stop looking for these home run balls that don't always come with Watson and Wicks and Dubs, right? Just open it up and make it easy for him a little bit. I mean, they're a little too complicated. I don't know if he was prepared all the way to play this game because he had the injury and there was a doubt if he was going to play all the way up to the kickoff time, right? Before the inactives were announced. So maybe they should have just gone with Malik Willis. Maybe he wasn't ready to go. Let him have the bye to heal. So I think this team will come out okay after the bye. I think it was just a lot of factors added up with Jordan Love. But the one thing they have to work on, get rid of those turnovers, make some better decisions, because I was listening to Tom Brady a lot on this game, and like he was like, "Oh, Jared Goff is just doing great pocket passing," and he's like, "Jordan Love makes another horrendous throw like every time." So he's got to please the GOAT here and play a lot better. And Matt LaFleur was also not happy about this performance. So Jordan Love again, they'll go to back to drawing board. It's good they have a bye because then we would trust them a little bit more coming out.
Yeah, hopefully he can get healthy. He just makes terrible decisions. He's just
Yeah,
crazy out there.
it's not very
He has
good.
a good arm, but makes terrible decisions. Now, Kyler Murray, his team puts up 29 points against the Bears. They score 3 touchdowns. The issue is they are all rushing touchdowns. Even Trey McBride got a rushing touchdown, but they were just running all over the Bears. It could not be stopped. Yeah, DeMarcado had a 53-yard rushing touchdown against them. James Conner puts up 107 yards. Trey Benson scores a rushing touchdown. So Kyler Murray ends the day with 154 passing yards, 6 rushing yards, and 0 touchdowns. I mean, a 4-point fantasy performance. I'm not so worried about it, though, moving forward. I just think that was really unlucky that all the touchdowns went rushing.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup this week, however,
Against
against
the
the
Jets, yeah.
Jets. So keep that in mind. And I would not alter from this game plan if I'm the Cardinals. You're 5-4. You're leading the NFC West. So they're not going to deviate, right? When you can run at that level. And what we didn't expect is Jonathan Gannon's defense has really come together really well of late. I mean, they were a good pass rush. They exploded in this game. They were in Caleb Williams' face all game long. So this defense is starting to feel it here with Gannon. So when you have that running game defense formula and it's working like this, why are you going to flip off of it, right? So I don't love Kyler Murray this week. I didn't love him this past week either because of the Bears matchup in the passing game and how he could run all over them. But I thought he would run out of it a little bit more, but he didn't need to with Connor and DeMarcado and Benson doing their thing. Why did he have to rush? So maybe this Cardinals team is becoming better than we thought, and that's not helping Kyler Murray's passing production chances.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a great game against the Jets either for his fantasy production. But I mean, it matters when your trade deadline is. But if he suffers again against the Jets and you can get him for super cheap because he has a bye in week 11 too, after the bye, he plays the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Patriots, fine, but they're not like the best defense. The Panthers and the Rams.
Yeah,
that's the rest of his fantasy schedule.
Trade for him.
Yeah, he's going to have a monster ending of the year, and he could be great in the fantasy playoffs. So trade for him for sure. Caleb Williams, on the other hand, I mean, he's just been not a usable quarterback again. He had those 2 good weeks, and that's it in weeks 5 and 6. But these last 2 weeks have scored under 10 fantasy points, gets 0 touchdowns this last week, 217 passing yards, 5 rushing yards, gets the Patriots next week. I'm done trusting Caleb Williams. He'll have some other big games, but I can't keep losing. Like, I wouldn't want to keep losing with him in my lineup.
Yeah, this offense and this team in general are different in one place away. In London and in Chicago, they're fantastic, right? So I would maybe reserve this offense and the best of it for when they play at home. So it's kind of weird that this team has been so good at home and so bad on the road. But another thing that's happening is he's got to stop trusting DJ Moore. I don't know what happened. I was thinking this could be a game where DJ Moore finally gets going, but if he couldn't get going here and they'd pivot to Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen, like, I do not know what's up with DJ Moore. We didn't love him going into the season because of the target distribution anyway, with Allen and Odunze and Cole Kmet. But we knew someone was going to be left out. I did not expect him to be completely left out, but he's been terrible. So that doesn't help Caleb Williams' chances when he's got to rely a lot on DeAndre Swift and the running game to try to win. And doesn't help when you're going to be dropped back and sacked most of the time in the game, which he was as well.
Yeah, it's just not looking pretty overall. It's just they can turn it around, and I'm sure they will, but not trusting him in fantasy, that's for sure. Tank Bigsby and the Jaguars pass catchers, just really the Jaguars offense in general. Yes. Trevor Lawrence got 2 rushing touchdowns, so he had an okay day. But Tank Bigsby, 8 carries, 22 yards, 0 receptions. Travis Etienne doesn't do anything in his return either. Brian Thomas Jr. kept to 2 receptions, 22 yards on 4 targets. Evan Ingram has 10 targets, but just for 4 receptions, 45 yards. Trevor Lawrence is looking terrible as a passer. This offense is looking terrible. Tank Bigsby has had 2 good fantasy games, both in which he scored 2 rushing touchdowns. The rest have been worthless. So what are you doing with these guys? I think Brian Thomas Jr., you keep playing. Evan Ingram, we keep playing. The rest, I don't want any part of.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, and they refuse to make the change. They will not get rid of Press Taylor. They will not move from Doug Peterson. They are sticking with the same thing week in and week out. When you looked at the number, you saw, they came back against the Eagles. There was probably some good fantasy numbers, and then, no, Trevor Lawrence was rushing for touchdowns. Trayvon Walker scored a random defensive touchdown there that probably shouldn't have been allowed there in that game. So it was bad. I mean, if Trevor Lawrence's best play is rushing at the goal line, you got some problems. And this is what's happening. And they were good at the 2-point conversion. Just channel that to other parts of the field. But it was pretty bad. They did at least beat the Eagles in the 2-point conversion game in that one. But yeah, really disappointing. And even more disappointing, Michelle, was our sleeper of the week, Joe Flacco. Oh, my gosh. Sunday night was hard to watch. I thought he was at least going to put up garbage points, but that did not happen either.
No, and Josh Downs gets 9 targets, but just 6 receptions for 60 yards. Joe Flacco couldn't do anything. I mean, he couldn't move in the pocket. The offensive line was getting like murdered right away, but also anytime he wasn't, he just wouldn't throw it either. Yeah. They need to go back to Anthony Richardson. Yeah. I think, like, if this is what you're going to get, what are you wasting Anthony Richardson's like growth for? They get the Bills next week. Big yikes. Not great. And so it's like Jonathan Taylor finishes with 13 carries, 48 yards. We could have brought him up as a disappointment as well. A huge disappointment. It's not looking good for this Colts offense. Moving on to the wide receivers, though, because there was a bunch of bad performances. But at the top here, bad. You got to go with Puka Nacua because no one trusted him last week with the injury. And then he has a great game. Then we trust him this week, even though he came up with an injury on Friday. Gets ejected for throwing a punch in the second quarter. Only 1 reception, 11 yards in the game prior to that. And he didn't get ejected till like right before halftime. So only 1 reception, 11 yards through halftime, basically. CeeDee Lamb only has 47 receiving yards on 12 targets. Plus Dak Prescott hurts his hamstring. DJ Moore, like you brought up, didn't do anything. Jalen Waddle has -4 yards in the game. 2 receptions, -4 yards. Score a touchdown. He scored a touchdown, but that's still a terrible fantasy day. And then Marvin Harrison. I apparently need to just rank him low for him to have a good day because I finally go back up on him. 2 receptions, 34 yards on 5 targets. Who are you most disappointed of in this group?
Yeah, I mean, overall season long, DJ Moore has been a disaster. I think CeeDee Lamb has to be better in a game that the Cowboys desperately need to win to stay in the playoff picture. You're facing the Falcons secondary. That's inexcusable here. I know Dak got hurt, but you're CeeDee Lamb. Like, you didn't do much, and Dak was only pulled late in the game when there was very little chance of them winning, right? I bet he could have played, and now they get the Eagles this week, and the Eagles are starting to become a better team overall, covering the slot and all that. So CeeDee Lamb is just, you expect him to come through, right? I mean, Puka Nacua, it's also been tough because you weren't sure how healthy he was the previous week, and now you had all the glowing reports that, it's a minor knee injury, he's going to go, and then it seemed like they're reluctant to go in that direction. So I guess you can give Puka the injury excuse, Harrison the rookie excuse, Jalen Waddle the offense excuse, but to me, more overall the season on Lamb this week would take the cake for me.
And I think Jalen Waddle's unplayable. I mean, he's just not getting
He's
anywhere.
just boring. I mean, I don't know what happened.
Also, anytime he touches the ball, he gets hurt. He got hurt again on one catch.
It's ridiculous. I mean, Achane has kind of replaced his role in the passing game too.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. I don't know what Mike McDaniel's gone from the great offensive genius of this league to what are you doing out there? And unfortunately, his receivers are paying the price. And no wonder Tyreek Hill is getting frustrated once out.
Yeah, I will say the same thing with Marvin Harrison as Kyler Murray. This week will probably be another rough week against the Jets, and they get a bye, and that's a lot. That's good for rookies to get that bye, and then after the bye, great matchup. So again, if you want to trade for Marvin Harrison after another disappointing performance next week, do it up. We are going to get into the most surprising performances of the week, talk about some injuries. Maybe you need to make some pickups on waivers. We'll, of course, get into our full waiver show on tomorrow, but we'll give you a little sneak peek here to end today's show right after a quick break. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed fundamental, basic truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. Those are just a few of the courses they offer. They have a lot more available. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost. It is easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon.
This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, it is officially the second half of the season. I believe half the games of the regular season are down. The rest are here to come. So plenty of time to get in on the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook. That's only at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle all the good stuff they have to offer at FanDuel, because right now new customers can get a $150 in bonus there if you bet a $5 winning bet. So that's $5 to win, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get in on the action. You do have time for the Monday night game. I do like the Chiefs. They're around 9-point favorites to take care of business here against the Buccaneers at home with Patrick Mahomes having a big day. So just go check it out. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, it is time to close the show, and these are some of the things that we want to look at in the injury front and kind of tease what we might be thinking about on the Week 10 waiver wire. We mentioned Chris Olave with a concussion. We talked about Alvin Kamara being a big factor. Well, Taysom Hill, I think, is also going to be a big factor because the quarterback, Derek Carr, did not play very well without Olave. He doesn't have Rashid Shaheed. They need playmakers on the field. So Taysom Hill, again, 41 receiving yards, a touchdown. He threw a pass. He was involved in the running game. Do you see Taysom Hill being a bigger part of this offense going forward, Michelle, as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, 2 of his last 3 games played, he's scored at least 14 fantasy points. He just needs to stay healthy, right? When he stays healthy, he's going to be involved around the goal line. He's, especially with Chris Olave out now, he's going to get some receiving work. I think he's a key pickup for people who are desperate for a tight end with Olave out. And like you said, it is, you might see just concussion. I think this one's going to last quite a while. Yeah. It could be to a length time of concussion out. Now, Drake London has a hip injury. We don't know the severity of that yet. Darnell Mooney's really like the biggest beneficiary of that, but he's not going to be on waivers, unfortunately. But if you have Darnell Mooney, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, you could look at Ray McLeod. I know he didn't get a lot of volume, but he did score a touchdown. And the Falcons do play that Saints team. That is the team that plays the Saints, not the Chargers this week. So when you look at the Falcons, they can exploit this team that's just falling apart defensively. Maybe they'll play a little bit more inspired ball without Dennis Allen, but still, Ray McLeod, again, that's only for desperation in deeper leagues if you're hurting with the bye weeks. But Drake London's out. You're right. Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts should be the beneficiary there. Now, A.J. Brown, I don't know if there was one. I mean, they threw to Jahan Dotson a little bit. Dallas Goedert was out of the game with Grant Calcaterra in, but it pretty much became the Devonta Smith and Saquon Barkley show. So I don't know if there's anyone there that could pick up. Should Brown miss time again? And again, it stinks because he always comes on strong. And he seems to have an injury all the time, and this time it's to his knee.
Yeah, one guy you might want to, like, if you are dealing with AJ Brown injury and you're like, I need to pick up someone off of waivers. It's not an Eagle player, but Demarcus Robinson now has 2 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He gets 9 targets this last game, 6 receptions, 94 yards, and again, 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. We'll see if Puka's good to go. If Puka doesn't get suspended for a game, then you probably don't want to go with Demarcus Robinson, but against the Dolphins, he might be an option that you can throw in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's still getting it with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua the week before. He's basically their third option. He's a big play option. So if you're not sure you're going to get a big play, you're not always going to have that opportunity. Now, I think Dak Prescott will be okay. We'll see it all week, but they are playing the Eagles. Their season is on the line again here this week. We thought it was against the Falcons, but it's really on the line against the Eagles. They have to win that game at home this week. So I think Dak will play. But how about Rico Dowdle? Ezekiel Elliott did something stupid in a team meeting, which is not surprising, but he was out of the game. So they went back to Dowdle. I think, again, just give this guy a little bit more work. I just think they just started limiting him. They brought in Dalvin Cook. Just see what this guy can do. I mean, the Eagles are not necessarily shut down against the run. Give Dowdle a chance because I think that's their only chance. Stay balanced a little bit to open up the offense.
Yeah, the 2 games they gave him a chance, week 5 against the Steelers and this last week, week 9, 18.4 points and 19.2 fantasy points. He had a good game, involved as a receiver as well. They get the Eagles next week. So I'm not going back to the Rico Dowdle, especially if Zeke's back there and they're trying to get Dalvin Cook on the field for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be too excited about starting Rico Dowdle next week. He's a viable option if you're desperate, but the Eagles have been really good against running backs. I wanted to hit on Jakobi Meyers real quick. He's probably not on waivers, but he had his best game of the year by far this last week. 11 targets, 8 receptions, 104 receiving yards. Now the Raiders stink, right? And they get a bye this week. Could Jakobi Meyers get traded? And where would you want to see him traded to for huge fantasy impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, he was a slot guy a lot for his career with the Patriots, and he kind of expanded his role once he went to the Raiders. And I think he's had a pretty good run with the Raiders. And now, without Devontae Adams, he's had to be their default number 1. Now, look, I don't want to say Chiefs because everyone is getting Chiefs, but I would maybe like to see him on your Steelers a little bit, right? Get a little bit of a possession guy who's going to catch passes away from George Pickens. The Steelers had their bye this week, so you can work him in a little bit to their offense. But I think that would be a good spot for him to land if they can make a move here. So I always thought the Steelers need that second target here, especially the one that can get open and they don't have to worry about getting the deep ball to him. So Myers, I think, would also fit really well with Russell Wilson. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I don't know. Raiders, I don't know. We get Desmond Ridder possibly this week starting. Luke Getsy's out, so I don't know where this offense is going to go. But they got to get Myers and Brock Bowers involved. That's all I know. Those are the only 2 pieces that they really have going forward if Myers is still on the team.
Yeah, I do think that the Texans could be interesting with them losing Stephon Diggs. That could be an interesting landing spot for him. I would like him with the Steelers. I don't know if that's great for fantasy, though, but it would be good for my actual team. Rome Odunze has a big game, even though Caleb Williams stunk. He had 104 yards. I think Caleb Williams only threw for 150 on a day, right?
Yeah.
So he had all of his passing yards, basically. Rome Odunze is just too up and down as well to trust. It was some big plays there, but I'm not going back into that until I see more consistency from him.
Yeah, they do get the Patriots this week. I mean, I don't know. It's very hard between DJ Moore doing nothing, Odunze showing up every few weeks, Keenan Allen, who knows what his role is going to be week to week, Cole Kmet. Maybe just Shane Waldron is not very good, and he's wasting all these weapons that they got for Caleb Williams. But with DJ Moore fading a little bit, I wonder if they're just going to give him less playing time and help Odunze get into this, because I think he deserves it. I mean, he's flashed every time they give him a chance. He's just a little bit too big play dependent to trust.
Yeah, it's just the same thing with Quentin Johnson, right? He has
Yeah.
some big plays, 118 yards and a touchdown, by far his most receiving yards in a game, but only 5 targets still. It's just going to be based on, do you get that one big play from these guys? I do think Quentin Johnson's going to be like Justin Herbert has always been very good with these deep guys, right? And
Yeah.
you're going to get these games. But Quentin Johnson's basically going to be what Gabe Davis was for the Bills, where if you get lucky and play him the right week, you're going to be thrilled. And then, there's going to be some weeks where you get 2 points from him.
Yeah, and they also had multiple deep threats. We talked about Josh Palmer being a sneaky play because of the Browns giving up so many big plays downfield. They forgot to cover people. Like Myles Garrett was going after Justin Herbert, and then they forgot to cover people downfield. So it's like Ladd McConkey actually had a decent game in terms of PPR. So they somehow supported Johnston and Palmer and what McConkey did and J.K. Dobbins. So maybe this Chargers offense, maybe we need like a Lions-like game against the Titans this week. Just blow them out, give everyone an opportunity to start making plays. Because if Justin Herbert is going to throw for 300, close to 300 every week, and this running game is going to get going, this Chargers offense might be turning a corner where you want a piece of more things in this offense. So I think Justin Herbert might be really strong play this week, coming off his 2 best games of the season by far, and then having these receivers come through. So I'm excited. I think Herbert might finish strong here and become a decent fantasy quarterback again.
And then one last guy I want to hit on, Jatavian Sanders, the 4th-round rookie for the Panthers. Now, last week we were talking him up, saying he's a sleeper, and he gets 1 reception for 7 yards. But this week he plays on a team high, or a season high, 85% of the team snaps. Gets 4 receptions, 87 yards. That's a season high. But, 3 of the last 4 weeks have been pretty solid for him. He's getting more involved. He gets the Giants next week. I do think he's a guy you want to keep an eye on if you're struggling at the tight end position.
Yeah, and the Panthers, maybe the trade of Deontay Johnson said, we're just going to play our young dudes. And look, Bryce Young wasn't all that bad last game. So he's starting to feel it maybe, and just play the young dudes with him. Sometimes the young guys vibe a little bit more than forcing in the veterans. And you had Xavier Legette score a touchdown in this game. You had Sanders look good. So just play these guys, give them a shot going forward. They're playing the Giants this week, and the Giants are okay against the tight end, but it's not a shutdown defense by any means on the back end. I think the pass rush will be a bigger issue for Bryce Young. But again, if these guys are going to get the targets and this Panthers team is going to get off the mat a little bit, it's not bad. So Sanders, we'll wait and see. Again, I'm not sure I would play him this week, but he's a guy that I would put on my roster maybe for some upside in the second half.
Yep, I'm with you there. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Give us a like. Send us a review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. That would be much appreciated. And we'll be back tomorrow just to dig in way more on the waivers and our waiver wire priority and our rankings. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.
Bye.